Hey readers, it's Miss Mozol here to teach you another online lesson. Um, Today's lesson is going to be how do readers track details across a whole text, right? So that's my job today, to teach you how readers track details across a whole text. Well, the best way for me to explain it to you is remember summarizing. And when you summarize something, you retell the most important information in a story. And we focused on fiction, right? The somebody won it, but so then. Well, tracking is very similar, but it's also very different. And this is how it's very different. Tracking, you just don't say the important information in a story. You track all of the details across the whole text. Okay? So that is how Miss Mosel is going to explain tracking to you. Um, Readers track one idea, one facet. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, in a story, think of all the different story elements that you have. You have characters, you have setting, you have plot. Well, we have to pick one facet at a time to track. Okay? I'm going to move my little self over here. Boop. Um, and guess what? You can also track nonfiction. You could pick like an event that happened or an important person. But for today's lesson, we are going to focus on fiction. Um, and I want to focus on the facet of characters in fiction. So we're not doing setting, we're not doing plot. We're going to focus on characters, and we can only pick one character. Okay, it's very important. We can only pick one, and we are going to track everything that character does from beginning to end. Okay, and write all of those details. And those details come right from our reading voice, right? Right from the text itself, right from the author's words. That doesn't mean you're not going to have to use your thinking voice, but we're going to be writing using the words from the text. Now, you might say to yourself, Miss Mosel, why do I even have to do this? Like, how is this going to help me in any way? Well, it's going to help you because authors write stories and they develop characters. Okay? The character changes. The character grows. Sometimes they learn something, sometimes they don't, right? But they grow. And authors, they sprinkle these details throughout the whole story about these characters in the text. And they expect you as readers to pick up on these details so that you can better understand the story. They're not just going to tell you, one detail, right? That wouldn't make for an exciting story. We have to track every detail so that we can figure out how this character develops in the story. That's why tracking is important. Well, how do you go about tracking a character? Okay. Well, I was thinking about it and I thought I always like to use graphic organizers because it helps our thinking. It helps us understand and keep track of our thinking. So, a good graphic organizer that helps us from beginning to end would be a timeline. And here's a fancy timeline I found, and it's rectangles with these triangles pointing right to the right to show that time passes. You can simply just draw a line, okay? Beginning, middle, 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 end, and then write the details underneath. But remember, we're not rewriting the story, we're taking notes. And note taking is abbreviating short text, like the way you do text messages, right? They're very short and sweet. Okay. So I just said, what do we take notes on? We're going to take it on our timeline. What are the details that we're going to look for? Well, there's so many different details you can look for. But today, Miss Mosel wants to focus on the do part. Okay, so I thought this little guy would help us remember that we're looking for details of what the character does. And see the way he's waving his little arms to help us remember? Okay, so there are different ways a character can do something. The first and easiest way is physical actions. You can see or visualize what they're doing. He climbed, he played, he cried, he screamed, right? They're all physical actions that you can see. It is also going to be actions that are less physical and more mental, right? So, like in the form of decisions. So, a character is going to make decisions, right? The choices the character makes is also an action, it's also a do detail. All right. And then the final do detail that we're looking for are decisions. I'm sorry, reactions. Reactions to how do other characters react to your character? How do they respond to him? Okay, so if that was confusing, let's review it. So we're going to track details. We're going to focus on one kind of detail, and that is doing, right? Action details, do details. And we're looking for the physical, what we can see the character doing. We are focusing on the decisions the character makes, and we are focusing on the reactions of others about what the character did. Okay? So those are the three things, the three do's that we will be tracking. All right. So this is the timeline that I did. Okay. And I'm going to come back to that. So I did mine ahead of time. But I pulled up the story. It's an old story. I remember reading it when I was in school. And I'm going to make it bigger here. Move myself up a little bit more. And the main character, not the main character, I'm sorry. I'm going to focus on one character, and the character that I'm going to choose to focus on is Lori. And Lori is a boy. And I know it sounds like a girl's name, but it is a boy. It's an old story. And I know it's a boy because in the first couple lines it says, the day my son, Lori, started morning kindergarten. So right there tells me it's a boy. So I'm going to look at Lori, and I'm going to track what he does. His physical actions, his decisions, and reactions. So I'm going to flip-flop back and forth from my timeline to the story, and I'm going to do it first. So let's see. The day my son Lori started morning kindergarten, he came home for lunch and spoke insolently to his father. All right, let's see. Did he do something? Oh, yes. So I like to write, look here, I like to write the word do, so I remember that that's the detail that we're looking for. The do details, the action details. And, right, I'm going to, where's my reading voice? Okay, it said that exactly. Do. Started kindergarten, right? I'm not writing out sentences, I'm just abbreviating. I'm writing short, sweet little words to help me remember. But they are words that I read right from the text. Started kindergarten. But remember, along with your reading voice comes your thinking voice. And my thinking voice, I put in parentheses here. And I'm thinking to myself, he started kindergarten, so he has to be about 5 years old. So I'm gonna write that in parentheses, about 5 years old. Okay. So let me go back to the text. There's something I didn't mention. See these little triangles, right? You have a triangle, then a bunch of writing, then a triangle, a bunch of writing. They go with my graphic organizer, okay? So the first triangle, all of my details are going to come from this first section, right? This first chunk. All right, let's continue. How was school today? I asked, elaborately casual. All right, he said. Did you learn anything? His father asked. Lori regarded his father coldly. I didn't learn nothing, he said. Anything, I said. Didn't learn anything. So let's go back and let's think. Did Lori do anything yet? Not quite. Let's keep reading. The teacher spanked a boy, though Lori said, addressing his bread and butter. Addressing means just buttering his bread and butter. For being fresh, he added with his mouth full. What did he do? I asked. Who was it? Let's go back to my graphic organizer. What did Lori do? Anything? Oh, I can see it right here. I see the action. He added with his mouth full. Lori talked with his mouth full. So I'm going to write that down, right? Lori, I wrote do, so I can remember. I'm looking for what Lori does. Talked with his mouth full. Here's my thinking voice, right? I'm going to put my thinking voice in parentheses. If you think something, maybe you didn't, but I thought that's gross, right? I'm thinking that's gross. So I'm going to put that in parentheses as well. Okay? Let's go back. What did he do? I asked. Who was it? Lori thought. It was Charles, he said. He was fresh. The teacher spanked him and made him stand in the corner. He was awfully fresh. What did he do? I asked again, but Lori slid off his chair, took a cookie, and left, while his father was still saying, "See here, young man." Okay, let's think about that. What did Lori do? Well, I see, and I remember from my using my reading voice that he took a cookie, right? And he slid off the chair. I'm going to write that down because that's what he did. And then I'm using my thinking voice, and what I'm thinking, I'm putting parentheses. I'm thinking like that's misbehaving, right? Because you can even see that his father said, "See here, young man, like, get back here. You don't have permission to leave yet, right?" So I'm reading that he slid off the chair and took a cookie, and I'm thinking, Lori was misbehaving. Okay? So, I'm going to stop right there. Now, if you were in class right now with Miss Mozol would have had you go ahead and, I would say, go ahead and read this first, right? You're going to read it first, and then Miss Mozol would give you this graphic organizer, but it would be empty. But I would leave this one up so that you could see it, right? You can see how Miss Mozol tracked Lori, the character Lori. And I would ask you to go and do this by yourself, right? Miss Mozol did it, then we would do some of these together, and then you would go off and do it by yourself. So, what I'm going to ask you to do is I want you to keep reading this. I want you to read the whole thing, okay? And then I want you to go back. Yeah, you're going to reread it. I want you to go back and I want you to try and track, not Lori. We're going to pick another character now. We're going to pick Mom. Okay? You are going to track every detail that Mom does. Remember the do, the actions. What does Mom physically do? What are some of Mom's decisions? Right? And what are some of Mom's, or how do people react to Mom? So you're going to draw something similar, okay? You can just draw lines. You don't have to draw the rectangles. Draw the arrows, and then you're going to remember each arrow chunks the beginning, middle, end for you. Okay, try a couple, and then bring it on Wednesday, and we will practice doing Mom together. All right, I would really love for you to have at least a couple do's down. Okay, practice this because again, tracking details across a whole text, picking one facet, whether it's characters, plot, setting, and tracking every detail using our reading and our thinking voice helps us better understand the story. That's what the author expects from us. Okay? I miss you so much. This is really starting to bother me. I really wish you were in front of me, but we're going to just keep pushing through, and we're going to get smarter Okay? Whether we're home or at school, we can still practice and do our very best. I will see you on Wednesday. Bye, readers.